I appreciate the kind words and your applause, but I came for neither. Okay? I'm not sure exactly why you came, but I came because I think this is the greatest profession on the planet. Now, you could argue that the medical profession is indeed important. And in the early part of June in 2004, Dr. Howard Luria was the most important person in my life when he put a stent in my chest. If you've never had that, but you get the opportunity to do that, it's a beautiful thing. You feel better like in 3 seconds. It's like, oh. But he didn't put the life in me. He allowed me to live. You put the life in the people who live with you every day. You could say, well, teachers are important. They teach you the ABCs and the ups and downs of the educational system. And yes, there's some value to that, but they don't spend nearly the amount of time with the young people that you do. Maybe an hour a day, 5 days a week, maybe a couple of semesters, and then you're on to the next teacher and they're on to the next student. So they don't impact people the way we impact them. And if they don't do so well at it, and they get a B instead of an A, and their GPA is affected 0.20, instead of getting into this university, they'll get into this university. It won't keep them from experiencing the upper level of education. If a swimmer misses a JO cut or an Olympic trial cut, they don't get to go to the almost Junior Olympics or the pretend Olympic trials. They miss, they miss. Pete Motekayas is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. One of his classic things is the stopwatch never lies. So swimmers, runners, downhill skiers, the stopwatch never lies. And so what we do is we take the young person who doesn't make the Junior Olympics or the Olympic trials or whatever, doesn't make their cut, and we help that person figure out how they remain relevant. We continue to put the life in them. And so that's why our profession, I believe, is the most important profession on the planet. We work with kids who ordinarily wouldn't have the opportunity to be shepherded through life. Now you could say, well, the swim instructor is very important, and there's no doubt about that. Swimming is the only sport I'm aware of that can actually save your life. But once you learn to swim, what are you going to do with that? Some people will never do anything with it other than be water safe, and that's fine. But if they show an inclination to be a competitive swimmer, they end up in your lap. And you're charged with helping them navigate. And so it's a big responsibility, one that I think we all take seriously, whether we are summer league coaches or Olympic level coaches. We need to understand how valuable we are in the process. So, as Don said, this profession of ours is really something special. I mean, there must be a reason. We've been doing this for 50 years. It didn't just happen and then the energy ran out of it. The association's actually 60 years old. And that's awesome. And with any luck, it'll be here 50 years from now. And some of you will be the people standing up here. Has anybody in the room been to all 50? Okay. Now we know that some have the first time this year, because Don showed those hands. How many people have been here 10 times or more? Show a hand. It must be important to you. How about 20 times or more? Still a bunch of hands. This must be really valuable. I really think that this is like the best week in the year. Well, not as good as the week I spent with Madeline in Roatan last April. But pretty darn close. And it's almost as good and sometimes better than the week I spend at the big meet every year. People moan and groan, I got to go over there for a week, you know. I went to Clovis this summer, and people moan and groan about going to Clovis in the summertime. Western zones. I couldn't wait to go down there. Number one, the weather is the best for finals. It is. It's 90 degrees. The sun is out of the sky. It's down on the horizon. There's a very light breeze if you're lucky. Nobody's hands, feet, head are cold. It's perfect swimming weather. Perfect. I couldn't wait to go. It's a lower level than Futures Nationals. But you know what? I'm going down with 17 kids, and I'm having the time of my life because they're totally engaged in what they're doing. How could you ask for something better than to be involved in an activity where people want to do? I'm hopeful that you are at the point in your career where you no longer have people coming to you that are made to come by parents or somebody. Help them find another place where they can be better served if that's the case. And our sport isn't for everybody. You know, some kids like games. Well, if they like games and they can swim, then get them into a water polo program. Some people like the anonymity of being on a team, and if the team wins, great. If they don't win, well, it's, you know, I didn't score a touchdown because the guy didn't block for me. Right? In swimming, you either pull it off or you don't. And so it's a lot like life in that respect, in my opinion. So Buck Dawson was the first executive director back in 1958. He was actually called the executive secretary, and he held that job for a year. And then Bob Owsley came along. They did have a clinic in 1968 in Hollywood, but it wasn't one of the ones that made it on the list. The first one here was in Washington, D.C. The first one I went to was in Palo Alto in 1970. And I thought, this is really cool. It's a little different than this one. That first clinic, there were like 3 speeches in the morning and 3 in the afternoon for 2.5 days. There are 71 presentations here this year. 70. You couldn't possibly go to all of them. But you can get that booklet either in printed and or CD-ROM form so that you can have the entire content. I asked John when was his first day on the job, and he said he started in January of 1985. He said, I remember it was like yesterday. He said, Jack Nelson and Bob Owsley took me to lunch, and at the end of it, Owsley said to Jack, he'll do. And so John's been at it ever since. So John asked me if I would give a presentation that could act as possibly an educational format, as a motivational, thought-provoking. You could do anything you want, Don, and call it anything you want. And so I thought, well, it's anniversary time. So let's look back a little bit at the people who influenced me, because it's all about me. John said so. So the people that I chose are not some of the ones that you would choose. We all have our own cast of characters that influenced us as we proceeded along in becoming a professional swim coach. Bob Owsley is the first one that I can remember. And there's Bob right there. I thought Bob was a pretty engaging guy. Now, judging by the cut of his clothes and the swimsuit on that guy and the fact that there are no goggles, I'm guessing that's probably early to mid-60s. But then the best picture of Bob is this one. Now, if you know Bob Owsley, that captures him. A certain irreverence, a certain, I don't take myself too seriously, and if life's not worth smiling about, I don't know what is. And then, of course, we have today's executive director, John Leonard. Now, here's a rare sight, if you know John. I said playful. You don't see John with a big smile like that very often, but he is capable of it. More often you see him looking like this. He's very intent. John has a purpose, and it is you and your well-being, and by association, the well-being of the people you work with. Here's another guy that made a big impact on me as I grew up, Phil Hansel. He was one of the early early presidents of the ASCA, and this picture to me strikes it perfectly. Phil was flamboyant, and I sort of thought of him as the Cape Crusader. He published an article that was reprinted in the February issue of 1988 Swim Magazine, Preparation for Life. He said, "Not everything we do in life is a pleasant experience. I have always felt that the great value of swimming as a sport is that it prepares one for life. Swimming is a cross-section of lifetime experiences. It can provide so many learning situations." I reprinted a bunch of these. If you'd like a copy, come up here afterward and help yourself. Phil Hansel. George Haynes. I was in a presentation this morning with Mark Schubert and Kathleen, and Mark spoke of George Haynes. George Haynes was at Santa Clara Swim Club when I just got started at Marin Aquatic Club in San Rafael. You can get there today in about an hour on Sunday morning at 5:30. Otherwise, it takes about an hour and a half. But he had the 800-pound gorilla when I was getting started coaching. George was very passionate about what he did. He was totally engaged with his swimmers, totally. Oftentimes you see him right down at pool level. And then this one I thought, now, I looked at that picture and I thought, I know that guy. He's like he knows something that nobody else knows. It's like he swallowed the catbird. You know, he's like, he's one step ahead of you. And for a long time he was one step ahead of many people. And then there's the picture of him being contemplative. George actually gave me the first kick in the seat of the pants that I needed to get my career going. When I was 23 or 4, I had a young lady qualify for nationals in the 200-yard breaststroke. And I thought I was pretty hot stuff because I was so young and I had achieved this thing with this new club that I had just kind of put together and went down to that meet, and she swam, you know, within a tenth or two of her best. We've all been there, right? And came back and ready to go back to work for summer and got a call from her parents. We're taking Leslie to Santa Clara. Because as you know, you have a parent whose kid swims well at the Junior Olympics, and the next thing they know, they're thinking about the real Olympics, you know, and how great their kid's going to be. And so I had a pity party for about a week. It's not fair. George, why did you do that to me? George didn't know me from Adam. He didn't do it to me. He just did what he does. running a heck of a program. Then I thought, I better get over my little hissy fit here. Otherwise, I'm going to continue to send people to him for as long as he's there and I'm here. That one little thing made an impact on me. And that's the last swimmer that I lost. You know this guy, Jim Doc Councilman. This guy is so famous that he's got a lecture named after him, the Councilman Lecture. Doc wrote perhaps a book that is still supremely relevant, The Science of Swimming. If you haven't seen it, I'm not sure if you can get it on Amazon. I got a copy I'll loan you. Very relevant today. Doc was totally involved with these guys. Totally. Look at that smile on that guy's face. Look at the smile on that kid. They are so interested in that. And then there was the teacher, Doc. You know, he was a PhD. Doc had a penchant in the early 70s for shooting the old, somebody help me, what were they, 35 millimeter film? The little, what's that? Super 8, the Super 8 films. And he had the swimmers put lights on their fingertips, and then he had grids on the side of the pool, and then he turned all the lights off in the pool, and he watched them swim, and you could watch their hand patterns, you know, against the grid. And at the time, he had 4 swimmers that he had filmed, 4 guys, and I apologize to the 4th, I don't remember his name, but Mark Spitz, Gary Hall, and Rick DeMont were all able to put their hand in the pool and take a stroke and have their hand come out of the pool in front of the place where they put it in. I never even thought about that stuff. But when you think about it, the water isn't like the land. When you pull on it, the water moves and your hand usually goes backwards. I got a bunch of swimmers at home who have their hands go backwards. I'm working on that. One of my favorite things to do, and this is an aside, is to watch breaststrokers. And I watch them as they go down the pool, and their hands start, let's call it right here, at the mark on the lane line. And I like to see if their hands go backward, or if they can pull themselves up to their hands, or if they've got enough leverage so that they can actually have their hands finish the stroke in front of the spot. Doc was the first guy that I know of that filmed that. Got me to thinking about a lot more than I'd been thinking about. And then there was Doc, who was always engaged. I got to tell you a quick story told to me by Mike Troy. Mike Troy made the Olympic team in 1960 in the 200 fly, won a gold medal, and was on the medley relay and had another gold medal. And Mike's a larger-than-life character like a lot of swimmers and swim coaches, and that's okay. Mike said in spring and summer of 1960, there were a bunch of us getting ready for the Olympic trials, and we were like fired up because we knew we were hot stuff. And we let Doc know that we knew we were hot stuff. And so Doc, at one point, was exasperated and had had enough. And so he bent down by the side of the pool and he said, guys, and he dropped his keys on the side of the pool. He says, guys, lock up when you're done. And he turned and he walked off. And they had some more fun, and then they decided to stop, and they got up, and they locked up, and they went off. And they came back in the morning, and there was no Doc, but they had the keys, so they opened the keys up, opened the pool up with the keys, and they went in and started swimming. They realized, Doc's probably not coming today. Maybe we ought to get to work. After the 3rd day, they walked by his house. And Marge, his wife, was out front working in the garden. Hi, Marge. Hi, boys. How you doing? We're doing good. How's Doc? Is he okay? Doc's fine. He's in the back working on the roses. Oh, okay. Well, we hadn't seen him for a few days, and no, he's fine. I'll tell him you were asking. Marge, of course, was in cahoots with Doc on this. So Doc came back 5 days later, and thank you. And Mike Troy said, we never worked so hard in our life as those 5 days. That guy was a genius. He knew exactly what he was doing, way more than many folks, even as great as they look at him, gave him credit for. Oh, this guy is here today. I saw him outside. Yeah, John Urbanchek, you can give him a round of applause easily. This might be my favorite picture right here. Look at that. John's the biggest fan of swimming that I know of. He's like, it's really important to him. And when somebody does something really well, he's willing to celebrate it. He's a magical guy. In addition to which, if I had kids, I don't, but if I did, I'd be really okay with him being the guy who helped my kids through the process. Story about John, we were laughing one time by the pool. He said one day when he was at Michigan indoors, took a flip-flop off, kicked it in the lane, and the flip-flop went like that. Came right back to him. He said, you don't think there's a current in that lane? And then, of course, to the other side of John, the pensive side, always thinking. Came up with all those colored charts. This guy, Styx Balatori. This guy made a huge impact on me. He was always looking at stuff. He always had his eye out. What's going on? How's it going to help me? How's it going to help my guys? What's happening with my guys? Honesty. If you learn nothing else from this clinic, learn to be honest. Don't kid your kids. They know when you're not being truthful with them. When they come back and they have a crummy swim, don't say to them, well, good job. If it wasn't a good job, you can approach it in any number of ways, but don't try to tell them it was good because they know it's not. Now, you can't say turd anymore on the pool deck. And we're not on the pool deck, so I can say turd. I'm on the pool deck at the LA Coliseum in the early 70s, and one of his swimmers, to use his vernacular, laid a turd on a relay leg. It was on the second or third leg, I forget which. And the kid comes out of the pool, and Balatori says, I'm putting you on the end next time, so if you lay a turd, the whole world can see it. Being honest. He wasn't mad at the guy, he was mad at the effort. I like knowing where people stand. So if somebody does something right, tell them. If they're not doing it the way they're supposed to, let them know. And then Ron was a really focused guy. Really focused. Now, I couldn't find a picture of him smiling. But I've seen him smile. I have no idea why he did this to me personally. But I'm at the Long Beach Plaza pool, late 60s, early 70s, and I'm walking down the deck, and he comes up and he drapes his arm around you. If you've been with Ron, you know, he kind of goes, what's going on, coach? Hey, Ron, how you doing? He says, look over there. And on the other side of the pool was this older gentleman in a bathrobe and a pair of slippers, shuffling along like this. He just finished his swim as the meet was getting started. And Balatori said, that's you and me in a few years. Oh, man. He was a good guy, that one. Now, you know Peter Dalen. Peter Dalen was several things in my mind. He was very specific. He wanted specific things in specific situations, and he was willing to explain why and what he wanted when he wanted it. And Peter was all about the team. The team is number one. It's a bunch of guys from his USC team, one of his USC teams. And this is whether he was college or the LAAC or a USA team. He was the coach of several USA Olympic teams. And he was open. And this is something that I think you will find with all really capable coaches. They are open to the possibility. I learned this firsthand in 1972. One of the swimmers on our team made the Olympic team, and we had just started the first formal cycle program. And we work hard for a day and we rest for a day, and we work hard for a day and we rest for a day, and it was a little pattern that we had developed, and it worked well for a lot of people on our team. And you know, we were supposed to, as club coaches, hand in little sheets about what our athletes looked like and what they could expect, and what, you know, so Peter was open to the idea of trying to help the swimmer stay comfortable. And he looked at that thing and he said, I don't know about this. This doesn't make any sense to me. I've never heard of this. But then he said, well, the guy did make the Olympic team in 2 events and set the world record at the trials in the 1500, so maybe we should just keep an open mind. And it worked out pretty well. Mainly because he, as head coach, in charge of, was willing to be open about. This guy, Jack Nelson. If you were on the pool deck in the late 60s, early to mid 70s, even late 70s, this guy was a fixture. Very self-deprecating. I beat anorexia. I love that. And then one of the most positive person on the deck anywhere. I can remember walking on the deck. He hardly knew me, but he'd seen me around, and he goes, hey, horse, how you doing? Everybody was horse. Horse or darling. The girls were darling, and guys were horse. Big smile. And then this shirt, I can remember seeing everywhere in the late 60s, early 70s. Access to success is through the mind. That was on the back of almost every shirt that the Fort Lauderdale team had. And then there's one more I share with you. Philip Cardoni. For each of us, it all begins somewhere with someone. Phil Cardoni was a history teacher at Munson Academy, a small boys' school that I attended. I attended there in the early 70s. He was the football coach. I played football. And in my junior year, I can remember it as if I were sitting here today with you. He's sitting up on the podium in 5th period study hall, and we're all studying, sort of. And he looks out at me and he goes, and I go, me? He goes, yeah, come up here. So I come up, and I up here, and on the table, he's got 3 or 4 sheets of paper spread out with X's and O's on them, diagrams of plays. He said, what do you think? You think this would work? That was the first time in my 16 years that anybody had collaborated with me. Anybody had asked my opinion about anything. I thought, that's pretty cool. This guy, the football coach, wants to know what I think if this play will work. I wonder how often you ask your athletes, if we do this, the intended result is this, what do you think? How do you think that'll work? What do you think is the best way to swim your event? I got my opinion based upon my experience. What do you think? And boy, when you get them to start thinking and giving you input, it's awesome. Everybody's got Phil Cardoni. Mark, this morning, you named the guy who made you want to be a coach instead of a lawyer that your father wanted you to be. Everybody's got somebody that flipped the switch for him. I took the opportunity of this presentation to ask a handful of coaches and swimmers their opinions about 3 different things. How has swimming changed in the last 10 or 15 years? What do they think it'll look like in the next 10 years? And how has it impacted them? I share this with you in the spirit of sharing. This is Dana Kirk, Pasa.
My name is Dana Kirk. I'm one of the site coaches for Palo Alto Stanford Aquatics. I believe that over the past decade or so, the sport of swimming has changed by introducing a lot more athleticism. Our athletes are a lot more athletic. Our coaches are coaching to that athleticism. We moved a little bit away from kind of the grinding method and towards more specialized training. And by having that, the sport's become more exciting. People are staying in the sport longer. People are coming to the sport more as a spectator sport, which is really cool. At the same time, I think that by having people stay in the sport longer, it's actually, for better or worse, I think it's up for debate, but we do have a lot of people staying in the sport longer, so the cuts are getting a lot closer together. There's a lot more people kind of vying for those spots, and we might be losing some generations of swimmers along the way there.
You know Dave Krodiak, right, from Fox Valley in Chicago? He's going to say hi to you.
First of all, hello to all my fine friends out in California. Hope this finds you doing well. In the last 10 years, we've seen the involvement around the internet and information and organization of it. It's getting better and better each time. Whether you're looking at films on athletes, to films at meets, to organizational structures as far as club goes, there's an abundance of information, but it's much more organized and detailed than ever before.
This is Craig Carson, local coach.
My name's Craig Carson. I coach the Brentwood Seawolves in Northern California club team. I've been a high school teacher and swimming coach for the last 36 years, recently retired from Heritage High School in Brentwood. You asked how coaching has changed in the last decades. One of the things that is very evident to me is the level of fitness kids have coming into our programs. Today, kids, when they come in, no matter what age, 8, 10, 15, they don't have the level of fitness that swimmers used to have, kids coming in. They need to have other physical activities besides swimming built into their training program to give them the benefit of the cross-training. I think that the challenges are well known with social media. I think that esports is also playing a part in this, kids in video games. Kids today can earn scholarships to some of our big universities for esport. That's a challenge for us. The competition for the kids' time is becoming greater with more and more choices for them to make. The knowledge of our sport has become much greater than it used to be. Getting this information to the kids takes more time. It also means that they have to have more intent in their practices than they used to have. And that intent is difficult when the kids' focus isn't as good as it used to be because of all the distractions.
But I do.
You know Richard Schulberg, right?
But I do think today's kids will work as hard as any group of athletes I've ever coached. And it is the responsibility of the coach to set the standard and raise the bar every day.
I thought this is a guy who's coached for 50 plus years. Very successful. He believes that today's athletes will work as hard as any group. And it's our responsibility to bring the level of expectation every day. And what will it look like coming down the road? Dana Kirk again.
In my opinion, 10 to 15 years down the road, I'm hoping that we have a very professionalized league of swimmers, much like golf or like tennis or other country club sports. And with that needs to come money and needs to come sponsorship and needs to be as exciting as possible, which is kind of how our sport's moving anyways. So I feel like that's a good thing.
Abby Liu, who coaches a team called Peak down on the peninsula in Northern California.
Another thing that I think that will change is, since the 50s are now an official event, I think we'll have a lot more cross-sport athletes, athletes who say that doing extreme sports, they have some swimming background when they were young, and they might be able to show up in our sport and swim a 50 and do really well, and vice versa. I think that with that flexibility, we're offering a lot more opportunities and opening doors for many athletes doing cross sports. One of the big things I think that's going to change in the sports of swimming in 10 years is the diversity. And it's not just the skin tones that we're going to include a lot more athletes in different ethnicities, but also coaches as well. U.S. Swimming is doing a great job with diversity inclusion development, and the Diversity Swim Camp is an awesome experience for all of us, and not just the athletes, coaches as well. So I think that this diversity will change in the 10 years of the face of swimming all across the board, coaches and athletes as well.
And what about the impact of coaching? It works both ways. You know, we know that we impact them, but they impact us. I mean, there's a selfish component to this game, at least for me. I mean, I know that I'm working with and positively influencing others, but I'm doing it for a reason for me as well. So let's look at it from both sides for a moment.
Well, it's the best job ever. I mean, there's not too many jobs that you can be motivated, challenged, look forward to every single day. And you come across unique people, both in athletes, professionals that are officials that have all kinds of different talents, and then coaches, of course. Most giving environment as far as people wanting to share their information, East Coast, West Coast, and of course my friends that are in Illinois. Nobody holds back, and it's the greatest environment. So every day I'm learning something.
John Denton Schneider swam for North Bay Aquatics and at the University of Arizona.
My coaches have had a huge positive impact on my life. One of the most important things I learned from them is to be process-oriented, not results-oriented. There's no way to guarantee myself a certain outcome, but focusing on doing every step along the way in the right way has always seemed to improve my chances. And when I fall in love with the process, I usually love the result too. Another major lesson my coaches taught me is to do the best I can with what I have. I might not be the most naturally talented, or I might only be operating at 75%, but the way to honor my team is to put whatever I have that day into making myself better. But the most important thing a coach taught me was something that Don always said. Our greatest power in life is the power to choose. I can choose to give it my all today, or I can choose to mail it in. I can choose to be engaged in the process, or I can choose to just go through the motions. I can choose to love what I do, or I can choose to hate it. Having left the swimming world, I can see how few people actually realize that they have this power over their own lives. I know that I do, and it was because I was lucky enough to have coaches like Don.
I'm going to go back here for a second. Bradley started out in the lesson program that Ken taught at the Tiburon Peninsula Club when he was 5, and he swam all the way through, was a junior national level swimmer, went to Duke, was a captain there his senior year, and ended up at Olympic trials in the 200 IM. So he's seen a lot.
How has coaching impacted you? So I have always held the theory of the role of coaches in kids' lives, that there are 3 main influences in a child growing up. Their parents, their teachers, and their coaches. In different forms, they all are telling you what to do and how to do it better. Parents and teachers happen to be influencing on subjects that the average kid is pretty averse to. 14-year-olds on average are not overly excited to hear their parents guide them on how to clean their room or go to bed at a certain hour. Nor are they overjoyed when a teacher is explaining to them differential equations or Spanish. Coaches have it easier though, and more often than not, they're tasked with showing a kid how to do the thing that he or she loves. This puts the coach in a different light. I mean, I remember hanging on every word my coaches said, and I worked hard in the pool, and part of that was for my own benefit, but part of it was perhaps even more so for my coaches' admiration and respect. You coaches have such a strong power over your swimmers and extends to every facet of these kids' lives. They will listen to you because you're showing them how to be better at something that they love, or at the very least enjoy enough to continue doing. My swimming habits and even my life habits have really been molded in part by the words of my coaches growing up. So thank you for listening to my piece, and Don, thank you for giving me a chance to share.
Some of Don Hedry's guys.
I've been swimming for 3 years on this program, and it's been a pretty life-changing experience. I came in as a freshman after water polo, and kind of throughout, I've just grown as a swimmer. I started off at a 50-point freestyle, and now at the end of my senior year, I went 45.76. So yeah, there's that. And I've also been a team captain for a year now, which is a pretty big step up because me being an underclassman, I was not super mature. So, you know, it's really changed me as a person. I feel like I've matured a lot and just become a nicer person, especially like around my teammates and friends.
Yeah, so specifically at Rindo Aquatics, I've been on a few teams in the past few years, and the big difference for me is the kids themselves and the mentality that they have. They all, or the majority of them, work very, very hard, and it's a pleasure to be around them. And I think that when everybody's working hard, it brings us all up together, and it really makes a better team dynamic.
Abby Lou again.
Coaching and life, and in general, work-life balance. It's a big change for me. I grew up in China, where I spent 8 years in Beijing for national team training, and I left home when I was 14. I spent 350 days a year with my teammates and coaches. We get to go home 15 days a year to spend time with our biological families. So really the teammates and coaches became our family. And same thing with coaches, they but they leave their families for the same amount of time to take care of their athletes. So the relationship between athlete and coaches is very different, and where they're really not just our coaches, but also our guardian as well. The communication, though, it's a one-way street. You do whatever coaches say. So I grew up in an environment when I first started coaching in the U.S. It was a huge adjustment for me. Number one, cultural differences, as well as the way of coaches and athletes communicate with each other. But I'm learning, and I've been coaching for almost 20 years now, and I feel that every day I learn from my athletes and seeing what they're going through in their life, which makes me a much better communicator, just to be open-minded and a better communicator, and become a better person, so-called. My swimmers say that I have. So I'm continuing to do so, and I hope to share my experience and learn from others as well. Thank you.
This is Andrew, one of the guys that swims for Richard.
Hi, my name is Andrew Bruzo. I'm committed to the University of Georgia. I'll start there in the fall. In the summer of 2017, I won the 400, 800, and 1500 freestyle at Junior Worlds. And I think the biggest part about coaching that's impacted my life is seeing how, as hard as the athlete works, the coach is working just as hard too, whether it's making the practices or even at practice when they're so active, making sure that everyone's doing it and like making sure everyone has like proper technique and stuff, and that helps you work harder when you see your coaches working that hard too.
Appreciates the coach working as hard as the athlete's working. Interesting perspective. One more time for Dana.
Coaching has influenced me by allowing me to be super competitive without having to put in 4 hours or 5 hours of grueling training a day. I get to like kind of live that out vicariously through my swimmers. At the same time, by being a club coach, it lets me watch a lot of these swimmers grow up. I get to start working with them when they're 5, 6, 7 years old and continue to work with them, either by being a direct group coach or being the site director all the way until they're 18, and then you see them go away to college, and you really get to see them grow and mature. So in my opinion, that's kind of how coaching has really made my life a better, just better in general. Thank you.
And one more, and then we'll move on.
So, how has coaching impacted my life? Coaching in general has impacted my life since I was in kindergarten, playing all sorts of sports. However, swim coaching has been the main proponent of impact. Not only have I been a swimmer the longest, but I have made the greatest experiences with my swim coaches. From learning to swim at my summer league team, to being coached under the great Don Swartz and Ken DeMont, to being a part of a team larger than myself in college at Harvard under Steph Morawski and Amanda Kulik, my swim coaches have been the constant adult figure in my life that isn't telling me to do the dishes or make my bed. At North Bay Aquatics, Don and Ken have aided me in developing into the person and swimmer I am today. They have taught me hard work ethic, how to get used to waking up early, how to take care of my body, and most importantly, how to be the best person I am able to be in and out of the pool. They have taught me philosophies and ways of life I would never have imagined or thought of myself. Lastly, they have created, nurtured, and developed hundreds of budding teenagers into all-star high schoolers, collegiate athletes, and successful business people that I am proud to call my closest friends. In college, your coach plays a similar role to your club coaches, but also slightly different. Everyone is now closer in age, closer in speed, and has a combined goal of winning championships. In addition, college coaches act as the sole adult figure and mentor in a college student's life. When your parents are not around and you're in college. And I have realized recently how lucky I am as a college swimmer to have two incredible women helping and guiding me through any problems I have, whether in or out of the pool.
Thought that was interesting. Of course, being a male and coaching men and women, I never really thought about it. But Mickey, who's at Harvard, really appreciates having women coaches, and she can relate and has a different, just has a different paradigm with them. And I never had thought about it that way before. Steve Young, the NFL Hall of Famer, played with the 49ers for years, so I see his name from time to time because I'm a Bay Area guy. Article just recently, he said, dreams are great and you should have dreams, but those aren't plans. A plan is something that's 80 or 90% executable. A plan is going to get done. I want a dream and I want a plan. I share this with you. In 1987, during the training camp, he saw something that he had never seen before. During training camp that year, a video crew was following head coach Bill Walsh. It was documenting his every move, recording his coaching, speeches, play calling, even following him to the lunchroom. And Steve said, "That's kind of weird. Does this guy think he's so famous that people want to know everything he does?" And Young said, "How humble was I when I found out?" He was giving everything he had to his assistants to go on and become head coaches. And on the way out, he'd say, "I'll see you in the championship game." At his height, Bill Walsh was 2 generations ahead of everyone in the league. No one was doing what he was doing, and he knew it. He packaged up all of his plays, all of his speeches into one unified toolkit. If you can have the spirit of Bill Walsh, the spirit of abundance, you can build relationships that will last generations. That made a big impact on me, reading that, because Bill Walsh was a genius. He discovered whatever you want to call it, the West Coast offense in football. But he wanted each person that he came into contact with had the opportunity to know what he knew. One of the things that's fascinating to me about the coaching profession, and this was since I got started back in the 60s, there doesn't seem to be any secrets. People are willing to share. If I go up to Don or Mark, or I'm going to get to know Kathleen better, I was impressed in that presentation, and I say, I'm curious about how you would do this. And they'll tell you. All you got to do is ask. I asked Bob Bowman one time, I said, how come Phelps breathes every stroke and fly? And he looked at me and he smiled. He said, I'm a big fan of oxygen. Now, he's taught Michael how to have the perfect body position even when he breathes. We got kids that breathe like this. So do you. And that's not very good. You got to learn to breathe and keep your body in line. But, you can ask the person sitting next to you, so what are you going to do when you go home from this clinic? And they'll tell you. It's fabulous. I thought this was a pretty cool picture. Talking about faces of coaching, Bill Walsh and Joe Montana, big smile. So I think coaching is impactful and collaborative. The impact goes both ways, you to them to you, us to each other. And it's collaborative. If it's your way or the highway, I think you might have a diminishing number of people. That doesn't mean they get to do it their way. You just have to get them to be with you in it. So collaborative is important. This came up in the presentation earlier this morning with Mark and Kathleen. In coaching, know the why, because that will inform the what, which will reveal the how. If you know why you're doing this, you have a real firm grip on it, then you'll know what it is you need to do to get what you want, the how. Now, they've said that music is a universal language, and I believe that. I've been influenced by music all of my life. When I was 6, my mother said, "You will take piano lessons." I said, "I don't want to." She said, "You don't have a choice. You will take piano lessons." So until age 9, I took piano lessons. And then I rebelled and said, "I'm through." And I threw a little hissy fit. And she said, "Okay, pick another instrument." And I went, "That's not fair." She said, "It doesn't matter, pick one." So I picked the clarinet. And then, when I was 13, Pony League football came along. I said, "Mom, no more clarinet. I'm playing football." She said, "Okay, but you and your buddies and me," she played the piano, "we're getting together every Sunday after church and we're playing music in the house." 226 Auburn Road in West Hartford, Connecticut. And so we did that. Music is part of my life. For a while I owned a rock and roll joint, and I met my wife. I've been married to her for over 30 years. She was singing in a band. I thought, yep, I'm going to get me some of that. And I did. And she's the reason I can coach. She realized that I was passionate about this. And so she said, "You better go do that." I remember coming home from practice. I'd been coaching again for 6 months, and I came home from practice in October. And I got to the house, and I walked in, and I said, "I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing." She said, "Well, you better keep doing it then." Bruce Springsteen is I don't know that he's a hero of mine. I'm not a disciple, but I'm a huge fan. He's about 4 years younger than I am, and he was writing back in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s about stuff that we all at that time were doing. We're trying to figure out how life works and what we're going to be when we grow up and how everything's going to work. And, what does this all mean? And girls and cars and school. And so I followed his music, and he's still writing today and performing and still writing songs about social consciousness. This was a song, one of his early ones here. Oops, I'm going to go right through that. No retreat, no surrender. This is one of the lines out of the first verse. Well, we busted out of class, had to get away from those fools. We learned more from a 3-minute record baby than we ever learned in school. I learned more from a 3-minute and 58-second swim than I ever learned in school. And each of you has a swim like that, and if you don't, keep your eyes open because you'll get one really soon if you're paying attention. I have 18 years of formal education. I learned more in 3 minutes and 58 seconds than I learned in 18 years in school. I like that. We busted out of class, had to get away from those fools. And then one more, racing in the street. This is partial lyric. Some guys, they just give up living and start dying little by little, piece by piece. Some guys come home from work and wash up and go racing in the street. I've been fortunate in my career to know some people who come home from work and wash up and go racing in the street. We got 35 kids in our group. There are 6 right now that I can name you that are like that. I'm going to see if I can get the other 29. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not going to happen. It's the law of averages. But I'm looking for people who are not dying little by little, piece by piece, but some guys who want to come home and from work and wash up and go racing in the street. And they're out there. Richard Schulberg. People today are willing to work just as hard as anybody he's ever seen. They're there. Our job is to go find them. Saw a clip from somewhere, a presentation here. There are Olympians in every town. Olympic-level coach. An Olympic-level coach. And that's not that hard. You just have to come to the clinic. And pay attention and ask questions. Thank you. And be willing to make mistakes. That's one of the things that you are professionally good at. Your kids make mistakes all the time. You know this. You bat 300, you go to the Hall of Fame with $1 million of contract. 300 is failing 7 out of 10 times. You get kids who go to a swim meet, they don't do their best time. I added half a second. Please, get over yourself. The mother walking out, she added a second. That stuff doesn't matter. If you swim well, with passion, you'll get faster. Steve Boltman's famous for that. He says, if you work hard, you'll get faster. You just don't know when. It's not terribly predictable. So, in closing, every one of the coaches that has had an impact on me, whose faces appeared here, and you have your coaches, and many others, I didn't have room to put everybody up there, Bill Walsh, all have charisma. If you have charisma, you will have people who will follow you anywhere. They will do whatever you ask them if you have charisma. And charisma, quite simply, is confidence plus humility. I've been on the deck at swim meets in Pacific Swimming, and there are some coaches who don't smile. I don't know what's the issue. It's not my job to solve it, so I don't go up and ask them. But they're not smiling. And you look at their kids, and their kids aren't smiling. And they usually don't swim that fast. I mean, this is not rocket science, people. I know some coaches who have a lot of confidence but no humility. They got no charisma. There's a lot of people walking around on the planet today who are humble, but they have no confidence. So they don't have any charisma. When you leave here and get on the airplane or drive home to wherever your home is, make sure you figure out how to be a little more charismatic somehow this week. Figure that out. That'll carry you past all kinds of mistakes you make. You know, and when you make a mistake, you go, man, that didn't work out very well. And that charisma will cause them to continue to follow you. So, again, swimming coaches, coaches in general, but swimming coaches, perhaps the greatest profession in the world because of what you teach when the mistake is made and how you overcome it. And then when you do something really, really well, you also keep that in perspective. As I tell our kids, unfortunately, we're not solving world hunger here. It means an awful lot to us, but let's keep it in perspective. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thanks.